The marketplace was loud under the burning twin suns. Voices of merchants rose like waves, calling out prices, shouting for buyers. The air smelled of dust, spice, and sweat. People moved like a restless river, but in that crowd was one alien girl. Her steps slow, her eyes hollow. Her skin was pale with hunger, her clothes torn, and her hands shook as she clutched her stomach. She had not eaten in days. Every sound of bread being torn, every sight of fruit being sold, felt like a knife in her chest. She watched from the shadows, her breath tight. The human farmer's stall was full of golden loaves, each fresh from the oven. The smell was warm and alive. She stared at them with wide eyes, her throat dry, her lips cracked. She whispered to herself, "Just one piece, just one bite." Her body moved before her mind could stop it. She slipped between people. Her thin fingers reached for the bread. In one quick pull, she grabbed it, hit it close, and turned to run. For a second, she thought she was free, but a shout cut through the air. "Thief!" A voice roared, all eyes turned. The crowd froze and then erupted. Men and women shouted, "Catch her! Punish her!" Some raised their fists, others pointed. The girl's heart slammed in her chest. She ran, but her weak legs stumbled. The loaf slipped, hitting the ground. A hand caught her wrist, strong, rough, not cruel but firm. She looked up and saw him. The human farmer. His face was tanned from the sun, his eyes sharp but not cold. He stared at the alien girl, trembling. In his grip, the crowd closed in, their anger hot. "Give her to the guards," someone yelled. "She should pay with her hands," shouted another. The noise grew like a storm. The girl's chest rose and fell fast, her mouth opened, but no sound came. She wanted to beg, but shame held her tongue. The farmer did not move. He looked at her face, the hollow cheeks, the trembling lips, the hunger burning brighter than fear. She was not dangerous, she was desperate. He raised his voice over the crowd. "Why did you steal?" The girl's throat closed, tears burned in her eyes. Finally, she whispered, broken but clear, "I was hungry." Her voice cracked. "I have no food, no family, nowhere to go." The crowd hissed, some laughed, others spat at the ground. "Lies!" a man shouted. "They always lie." But the farmer's grip softened. He pulled her forward, standing between her and the angry crowd. "Tell me," he said, his tone low but steady. "What will you give in return for the bread you stole?" Her heart pounded. She thought of running but saw no escape. She thought of begging but felt the weight of shame. Then the words spilled out, desperate and sharp. "I will work your fields by day." Her lips trembled. "And warm you by night." The crowd gasped. Some laughed cruelly. Some looked shocked. The farmer's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in surprise. He saw that she was not shameless. She was desperate. Her offer came not from desire, but from survival. For a long moment, silence pressed heavy on the marketplace. The only sound was the loaf of bread rolling in the dust. The farmer's hand still held her wrist, but his eyes searched hers. Would he hand her to the guards? Would he push her into the dirt and turn away? Or would he see her broken pride and hollow hunger for what it truly was? The suns burned above, the crowd waited, and the alien girl stood trembling, her fate hanging in the space between his silence and his choice. The crowd's voices still echoed in the marketplace, but the human farmer's grip on the alien girl's wrist held everything silent for her. She stood trembling, her chest rising like a cornered animal. Shame burned her cheeks, but hunger was stronger. The farmer bent, slightly, his voice low. "What did you say?" Her lips shook, her throat dry, but she repeated louder this time. "I will work your fields by day and warm you by night." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some spat at the ground, calling her filthy. Others laughed cruelly, their laughter sharp like knives. To them, she was nothing but a thief, a beggar, a piece of dirt to be kicked aside. But the farmer did not laugh. His eyes stayed fixed on her, searching for truth. Her words carried no teasing, no charm, only desperation. Her pride was broken but not gone. He could see the fire still inside her hollow eyes. The guards finally pushed through the crowd, their armor clinking. One of them shouted, "Hand her over! A thief must be punished!" The farmer turned slowly, his body blocking her from their reach. "She is mine," he said firmly. "She stole from me. I will decide her punishment." The guards hesitated. The crowd murmured. No one dared to challenge the farmer directly. He was known, respected, his hands strong from years of work. The guards finally nodded and stepped back. But the whispers spread like smoke. The alien girl could hardly breathe. She thought he would give her away, thought her life would end in chains or worse. Instead, he pulled her forward, away from the market. His grip was still firm, but not cruel. As they walked, she dared to speak. "You should have given me to them." Her voice was bitter, sharp against her own fear. He glanced at her, his face unreadable. "And why?" "Because I am nothing," she whispered. "I am not worth your trouble." The farmer stopped walking. He turned, looking at her fully, his voice steady. "If you were nothing, you would not be standing here." Her chest ached at his words. She lowered her eyes, feeling the sting of tears, but she refused to let them fall. She had lived too long in the dust to show weakness. They reached his farm on the edge of the valley. Fields of dry earth stretched wide, waiting for hands to work them. The farmhouse stood simple, wooden walls marked by storms. She stared at it as though it were a palace. Inside, the air smelled of soil and bread. Her stomach twisted, her hands shook. The farmer set the bread she had tried to steal on the table. "Eat," he said. She froze, staring at it, her mind fighting between hunger and disbelief. Slowly she reached, tore a piece, and placed it in her mouth. The taste filled her tongue like fire, hot, alive. She devoured it, each bite faster, crumbs falling, tears sliding down her cheeks without her consent. The farmer watched silently, his face unreadable. He did not chain her, did not strike her. When she finally slowed, breathing hard, he said, "So you offer me your labor and your body, is that it?" Her head dropped, shame crushing her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "I have nothing else. I cannot pay with coin. I cannot pay with gold. Only with myself." The words cut her like knives, even as she spoke them. She hated how weak she sounded, but there was no choice left. The farmer leaned forward. His eyes were sharp, but his voice calm. "Listen to me, girl. I do not take slaves. If you work in my fields, it will be because you choose to. And as for your second offer," he paused, his jaw tightening, "that is not something you owe me, not something I will demand." She blinked, confusion filling her face. "Then why save me? Why feed me?" He stood, his voice steady but quiet. "Because I know hunger. I have seen it break people, and I will not stand by when I can stop it." Her breath caught, her heart pounding. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not with strength, not with mercy. She pressed her hands to her chest, unsure if she wanted to cry or scream. Outside, the night grew cold. Winds swept the valley. The farmhouse lantern flickered against the shadows. Inside, two lives sat across from each other. One human farmer, one alien thief, bound not by chains, but by a bargain born of desperation. But deep in the silence, she wondered, was this bargain the end of her freedom or the start of something she could not yet name? The night stretched long and the alien girl lay awake, her mind torn between fear and hope. The farmer's words echoed, not as a threat, but as a weight. "If you work, it will be because you choose to." Yet still in her heart, she whispered, to herself, the words that had sealed her fate. "By day I will work, by night I will stay." The night was still, the valley wrapped in silence. Only the soft creak of the farmhouse wood and the distant call of night birds broke the air. Inside, the alien girl sat on a wooden chair, her eyes fixed on the floor. Her thin fingers twisted. Together, her body tense as if one wrong word would shatter her chance at life. The farmer moved slowly, setting tools back on their shelves, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. He had fed her, given her water, and yet she still sat like a prisoner, afraid to breathe too loudly. Finally he spoke, his voice steady but low. "What is your name?" The girl lifted her eyes, surprise flickering across her face. She hesitated as though the word itself carried danger. "Lyra," she whispered, her voice soft as the wind. The farmer nodded. "Lyra," he repeated, as if testing the sound. Then he pointed to himself. "I am Daniel." She blinked, the name feeling heavy, important. It had been long since anyone introduced themselves to her. She bowed her head, not sure how to answer. Daniel sat across from her, leaning his elbows on the table. "You offered me two things, work and warmth." His voice did not rise or fall. It carried no mockery, just calm weight. "But I will not take what is not freely given." Lyra's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to remind him of her desperate offer, but his eyes silenced. They were steady, not soft, not harsh, but full of something she did not understand. "You will work the fields," Daniel said. "That is honest labor. It will give you food, shelter, and purpose." He paused, his gaze holding hers. "But the other part of your offer, that is not for me to accept. You keep your dignity." "Lyra." Her breath caught. The words struck deeper than any kindness she had ever known. She lowered her face into her hands, tears slipping through her fingers before she could stop them. She hated crying, hated showing weakness, yet the tears came anyway. Daniel stood and walked to the door. He opened it, letting the night air drift in. Cool winds swept the room, carrying the scent of earth and stars. "You are free to leave," he said simply. "No chains hold you. Here, if you wish to go, you may." Lyra's head snapped up. Her chest rose fast. She stared at him wide-eyed. Her voice cracked. "You would let me walk away? After I stole from you?" He turned slightly, the lantern's glow cutting across his face. "Yes," he answered. "But if you stay, you work. You earn what you eat. You sleep under my roof, not as a slave, but as a worker." The choice pressed against her chest like a heavy stone. She could run back to the dust and hunger, or she could stay here and bind herself to this man's rules. Her pride screamed at her to run, but her stomach ached with hunger, and her heart whispered of safety she had never felt before. Slowly she stood, her legs weak, her eyes met his. "I will stay," she said, the words trembling but firm. Daniel nodded once. "Then at dawn, you will rise and work the fields with me." He showed her a small room at the back of the farmhouse. The walls were bare, the bed simple, but it was clean. A blanket folded neatly at the edge. Lyra stood in the doorway, staring as if she had stepped into another world. She touched the blanket with trembling fingers. It was soft, warmer than any corner of stone she had ever curled into. Her throat ached again, not from hunger, but from something she did not understand. Daniel left her there, closing the door gently. Lyra lay on the bed, her body stiff at first. She expected chains, expected the sound of locks, but none came. Only the quiet of the farmhouse, the steady rhythm of the night. Sleep did not come easily. Her mind twisted with fear and wonder. What did this man truly want from her? Why would he save her? Feed her? When he could have cast her to the guards. The stars shifted outside. Hours passed. Finally, her eyes closed, and for the first time in years she slept without the fear of being dragged away in the dark. When dawn broke, the light spilled across her face. Lyra woke to the sound of Daniel's boots on the floor, the smell of bread in the air. Her heart beat fast. She sat up, confused by the strange calm around her. Daniel's voice came through the door. "Rise, Lyra. The fields wait for no one." She pressed her hand against her chest, steadying her breath. Today she would step into the dirt not as a thief, but as something new. Her fate was now tied to the farmer's choice, yet deep inside, she feared what tomorrow might demand, for kindness was a gift she had never trusted, and trust was the most dangerous bargain of all. The morning sun rose slowly, painting the valley in gold. Daniel stepped into the fields with his tools, the earth dry beneath his boots. Lyra followed behind, her steps uncertain, her body still weak from hunger. She squinted against the light, her thin hands clenching. Daniel handed her a small hoe, its handle worn smooth by years of use. "We break the soil first," he said, his voice steady. "Roots must go deep if They are to live. Lyra nodded, but her arms trembled as she lifted the tool. The earth felt heavy, each strike shallow. Her breath quickened, her chest burned, sweat slid down her brow though the day had barely begun. Daniel worked beside her, strong and steady. His strokes cut deep into the ground. Each swing seemed effortless. Her eyes darted to him again and again, wondering how he carried such strength. Her own pace slowed, her body screaming. A voice in her mind whispered, "Leave, you cannot do this, you do not belong here." But another voice answered, "Stay, you owe him. You cannot return to the dust." By midday her arms shook too much to lift the hoe. She dropped it, collapsing to her knees, her chest heaved, her vision blurred. Daniel paused, watching her silently. She braced herself for anger, for harsh words, but they did not come. Instead, he brought her a flask of water. The cool liquid touched her lips like a gift from the stars. She drank fast, coughing, water spilling down her chin. Daniel set a piece of bread beside her. "Eat," he said. "The soil teaches slowly, but it teaches all." Lyra stared at him, her pride flaring. "Why are you not angry? I am weak, I cannot even swing the tool." Daniel wiped his brow with the back of his hand. "Strength comes with time. Hunger makes weakness. Not you." His words struck her harder than the sun. She wanted to argue, but her chest tightened. With something she did not understand, she looked away, chewing the bread slowly. By evening, her hands were blistered, raw from gripping the hoe. Each step back toward the farmhouse felt heavy. Neighbors passing along the road whispered to each other, their voices carrying sharp words. "That's her, the thief," one woman muttered. "He keeps her in his house." Another added, "A farmer with no shame." Lyra's ears burned. Her head lowered. She clutched the blanket Daniel had given her the night before tighter around her shoulders. The whispers dug into her like knives. Inside the farmhouse, she sat by the small fire. Her hands stung as she wrapped them with cloth. Daniel placed a bowl of stew before her. The smell made her stomach twist with hunger again. She hesitated, whispering, "They hate me." Daniel sat across from her, his eyes calm. "Let them talk. Words do not plow fields, hands do." She stared at him, his steady face lit by firelight. His calm was a strange shield. She envied it, but also feared it. "You will be ruined if you keep me here," she said bitterly. "They will not forget what I am." Daniel leaned forward, his voice firm. "What you are is alive. That is enough for me." Her heart pounded. The words echoed long after silence filled the room. She lay awake that night, again staring at the ceiling. Her body hurt, her hands throbbed, but in her chest a strange warmth grew. Days turned to weeks. Each dawn she rose. Each day she fought the soil. Her body hardened slowly. Her arms grew stronger, her steps firmer. She learned to swing the hoe deeper, to carry water longer, to pull weeds until her back ached. The neighbors still whispered. Their stares followed her in the market. Some spat at the ground when she passed. Others laughed cruelly, but she no longer lowered her eyes. She carried the farmer's words in her heart. Hands plow fields, not whispers. Yet one evening, as she walked past the edge of the valley, she heard different whispers. Rough voices hidden in the shadows. Not neighbors, but raiders. Their words chilled her. "Blood. The farmer's land is ripe. Easy to burn. Easy to take," one voice hissed. "At night we strike, take what we want, none will stop us," another growled. Lyra froze, her heart racing. She pressed herself against the rocks, listening. The raiders' laughter was low and cruel. The plan was clear. They would come soon. She stumbled back to the farmhouse, her breath short. Her hands shook as she gripped the doorframe. Inside, Daniel looked up, his face calm as always. But she saw danger in the shadows now. A storm waiting to break. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "They are coming." Daniel set down his tool slowly, his eyes narrowing. The firelight flickered. Across his face outside, the wind carried the smell of dust and rain. The fields of struggle had only been the beginning. Now something darker waited on the horizon. The sky darkened long before sunset. Heavy clouds rolled across the valley, turning gold into gray. The wind howled through the fields, bending the crops until they seemed to bow to the storm. Lyra stood at the doorway of the farmhouse, her eyes on the horizon. Her heart was still heavy with the words she had overheard from the raiders, but now another fear pressed close. A storm was coming, a storm of sky and a storm of men. Daniel moved steadily, securing shutters, tying ropes, pulling tools into shelter. He worked with the calm of a man who had weathered many storms, but his eyes, sharp and watchful, showed he knew this night would not be ordinary. Rain began to fall, cold and sharp. The roof rattled as the first waves of wind struck the walls. Lightning cracked, lighting up the valley in white fire. For a moment, Lyra saw the outline of the distant hills, and for a moment she thought she saw shadows moving, not of trees, but of men. Her chest tightened. She turned to Daniel. "They will come tonight," she whispered. "The raiders," they spoke of this, "they will use the storm to hide their attack." Daniel paused, his jaw tightened. He nodded once, as though he had already expected it. "Then we prepare," he said, his voice steady as stone. Together they moved quickly. Daniel fetched an old axe, its blade worn but sharp. He handed Lyra a long wooden staff. She clutched it with trembling hands, her arms weak but her heart racing. "Do not fear the storm," Daniel told her. "Fear only losing your will. Stand firm even when the earth shakes." The farmhouse groaned under the force of the wind. Rain hammered the windows. The fire inside flickered low, casting long shadows across the walls. Lyra's breath came fast. Her body remembered hunger and pain, but now it felt something new, the pull to fight. Suddenly, above the roar of thunder, came another sound. The crash of wood, the shout of men. Shadows spilled into the yard, torches burning despite the rain. Raiders, their eyes wild, their blades flashing. Daniel stepped into the doorway, axe in hand. His voice rose above the storm. "This land is mine. You will not take it." The raiders laughed, their voices cruel. "One man cannot stand against us." One sneered. "And a thief girl at his side?" Pathetic. Lyra's grip tightened on the staff. Fear burned in her chest, but alongside it anger rose. These men wanted to destroy the only place she had found shelter, the only man who had seen her as more than nothing. The first raider charged, his blade lifted high. Daniel swung his axe and steel met steel. Sparks burst in the rain. The sound cut through the night like a scream. Another raider rushed toward the side of the house. Lyra stepped in his path. Her arms shook, but she thrust. The staff forward, it struck his chest, sending him stumbling back into the mud. Her breath came in gasps, her heart thundered. More raiders spilled forward. The storm masked their footsteps, but their shouts filled the valley. Daniel fought like the earth itself, each strike of his axe pushing men back. His body moved with strength, but even he could not fight forever. Lyra swung her staff again, clumsy but fierce. She blocked a strike, felt the jolt through her arms. Pain shot up her shoulders, but she did not fall. She pushed back, screaming, the sound lost in the thunder. The fight raged on. Lightning lit their faces. Rain turned the ground to rivers of mud. The farmhouse stood strong, but the fields burned where torches fell. Smoke and rain twisted together, choking the air. In the chaos, one raider slipped past Daniel's guard, his blade lifted toward Lyra. Her eyes widened, fear freezing her body. But before the strike landed, Daniel's axe cut across, knocking the weapon aside. He shoved the raider back, his voice sharp. "Stay behind me!" But Lyra shook her head, her voice breaking. "No, I will fight. I will not run again." Her words struck even through the storm. Daniel glanced at her, something fierce in his eyes. He gave a short nod, and together they faced the next wave. The battle stretched long into the night. The raiders grew tired, their numbers thinning. The storm broke their fire, the mud slowed their feet. Daniel's strength and Lyra's stubborn courage turned the tide. Finally, the raiders fled into the darkness, their shouts fading. Their torches, drowned by rain, silence returned, broken only by the pounding of rain and the ragged breaths of two figures standing in the mud. Daniel lowered his axe, his chest rising and falling. Lyra dropped her staff, her arms weak, her knees shook, but she stood. Lightning lit the valley one last time, showing the ruined fields, the broken fences, but also the farmhouse still standing. Lyra turned to Daniel, her voice hoarse. "I stayed. I did not run. Daniel looked at her, his face hard but his eyes softer than she had ever seen. Yes, he said simply. You stood. The storm raged on above them, but inside, beneath the weight of rain and fire, something stronger had been born, a bond not of bargain but of choice. The storm had not ended, but the worst of its rage had passed. The rain softened to a steady curtain. The thunder rolled farther away, yet the smell of smoke lingered in the valley. Thick and bitter, Lyra stood in the muddy yard, her staff slipping from her hand. Her arms were raw and bruised, her legs trembling. She could barely feel her fingers, but inside her chest her heart still pounded with fire. Daniel set down his axe, the blade dark with rain and ash. His shirt clung to his back, his breath deep but steady. He scanned the broken fences, the trampled soil, the torches drowned in puddles. They will return, he said simply. Raiders never accept defeat the first time. Lyra's throat tightened. Her eyes searched the field where shadows had clashed only moments ago. She whispered, "Then what do we do?" Daniel looked at her, his eyes sharp and clear even through the rain. "We fight again if we must," he said, "but next time we will be ready." Inside the farmhouse, they lit the fire back to life. The warmth filled the small room, but the walls still shook under the storm's voice. Daniel tended his axe, sharpening the blade slowly, the sound of stone on steel filling the silence. Lyra sat near the flames, her body aching, her hands raw with blisters. She watched him work, her eyes heavy. "Why do you trust me?" she asked suddenly. Her voice was low, almost lost in the crackle of fire. Daniel paused, the axe still in his hands. He lifted his gaze. "Because you stayed," he answered, simple as earth. "You could have run when the raiders came, but you chose to stand. That choice tells me more than any word." Her chest ached at his answer. Her mind remembered years of running, of hiding, of stealing. But tonight, for the first time, she had stood. She had fought. She pressed her hands tighter together, whispering, "I was afraid. I still am." Daniel nodded. "So was I," he admitted. His voice was steady, but his words cut through the silence. "Fear is not weakness, Lyra. Fear is proof that you are alive." His words sank deep like seeds in soil. She looked at the fire, her reflection trembling in the flames. For the first time she felt that her life might hold more than hunger and shame. But outside, the valley was not quiet. The raiders had retreated, but they had not vanished. In the darkness beyond the fields, eyes still watched, blades still gleamed. They licked their wounds and planned their return. The next day, Daniel and Lyra worked side by side, repairing fences, gathering what crops the storm had spared. Her body screamed with every movement, but she did not stop. She felt something strange with each swing of her hoe, each step in the mud. It was not only labor, it was belonging. Yet as night fell again, the fear returned. The silence outside the farmhouse felt heavy, too heavy. The wind carried no laughter of neighbors, only the whisper of danger. When the attack came, it came without warning. A sudden crash of wood, a roar of voices, fire flaring against the wet night. The raiders had come again, fiercer, angrier. Daniel grabbed his axe, his voice rising. "Lyra, stay close!" But Lyra did not hide this time. She seized her staff, her arms steady despite the trembling of her heart. Together they stepped into the yard, rain pouring, fire glowing against the storm. The raiders charged, their blades flashing. Daniel met them with strength, each swing of his axe cutting through the night. Lyra moved beside him, striking, blocking, her body clumsy but her spirit unyielding. One raider lunged at Daniel from behind. Lyra cried out, thrusting her staff. It struck hard. The man fell back into the mud. Daniel glanced at her, his eyes blazing. "Good," he growled, before turning back to the fight. The battle raged fierce. Firelight clashed with rain. Steel clashed with wood. The air filled with the cries of men and the pounding of hearts. Lyra's arms bled. Her body burned. But each time she fell, she rose again. Her fear twisted into fury. Each blow she gave was not for survival alone, but for the life she had begun to claim. Daniel fought like stone and storm, his axe a blade of fire in the night. But it was Lyra's defiance, her refusal to run, that gave the fight its heart. Finally, as dawn broke, the raiders broke too. Their courage drowned by the storm, their bodies driven back. They fled once more into the valley, their shouts fading. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of rain on smoldering fires. Daniel lowered his axe, his arms heavy. Lyra collapsed to her knees, mud soaking her torn clothes. Her breath came sharp, her chest heaving. Daniel walked to her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You stood again," he said softly. His voice was no longer stone but warm, almost proud. Lyra looked up, tears mixing with rain. "I did not stand alone," she whispered. The storm's last clouds drifted away. The valley lay broken but alive, and in the heart of the farmhouse yard, amid the fire and the blade, two figures stood, bound not by bargains or chains, but by choice and courage. The valley was quiet after the storm. The air smelled of wet earth and smoke. The sun rose weakly through broken clouds, casting pale light on ruined fields. Fences lay splintered, crops drowned in mud. But the farmhouse still stood, scarred yet unbroken. Lyra sat on the farmhouse steps, her body wrapped in a blanket. Her arms bore cuts, her hands blistered. Her face was pale, but her eyes were alive. She had fought, she had bled, and she had not run. Daniel moved through the yard, gathering what could be saved, his steps slow but steady. His axe rested by the doorway now, its blade dark with battles past. He looked at the land, not with despair, but with the calm of a man who knew fields could always be sown again. Neighbors came slowly, their whispers carried on the wind. They saw the blackened ground, the broken gates, and the thief girl sitting by the farmer's house. Some frowned, some shook their heads, but others for the first time looked with quiet awe. They had seen the flames last night, they had heard the clash of steel, and they had seen raiders flee. One old man muttered, "The thief fought." Another nodded. She stood beside him. The word spread, soft but steady, not cruel like before. Inside, Daniel placed bread on the table, the last of the loaves. He called softly, "Lyra, eat." She rose, her legs weak. She sat at the table, staring at the bread. Her throat tightened. Hunger still lived inside her, but now it was joined by something else. Belonging. She tore the bread in half and pushed a piece toward Daniel. "We share," she said. Her voice was soft but firm. He met her eyes, a small smile tugging at his lips. He accepted. They ate, together in silence, the act stronger than any vow. When the meal ended, Daniel leaned back, his voice steady. "You offered me work and warmth, Lyra, but I will tell you this, you owe me neither." Her eyes widened. Her heart thudded in her chest. She whispered, "Then why keep me? Why save me?" He folded his hands, his gaze calm. "Because no one deserves to be left to hunger. Because you are more than what you were forced to become." Her breath caught, her vision blurred with tears. She lowered her face, her shoulders shaking. For so long she had been called nothing, thief, beggar, dirt, but now in his voice she heard something she had never known. Daniel rose, walking to the window. His eyes scanned the ruined fields. "This land is broken, but it will rise again. Just as you will." He turned back, his voice steady. "Stay. Not as a thief, not as a bargain, but as family." The word struck her like lightning. Family, a word she had not dared to think of for years. Her lips trembled. "Family?" she whispered. He nodded once, firm. "If you choose it." Lyra stood slowly. Her hands shook as she pressed them against her chest. Tears rolled freely now, but she did not hide them. She stepped toward him, her voice breaking. "Then I choose." The farmhouse felt different then. No longer a shelter of wood and stone, but a home. Outside, the land was wounded, but the sun climbed higher, light spreading across the valley. In the days that followed, Daniel and Lyra worked side by side. They rebuilt fences, cleared the mud, planted seeds again. Neighbors came, some still suspicious, but many offered quiet help. The story of the thief who stood against raiders grew, whispered from house to house, until at last people spoke her name not with scorn, but with respect. Lyra's body hardened, her spirit steadied. At night she sat by the fire, not as a servant, not as a guest, but as something more. She listened to Daniel's voice steady as the earth and felt her heart settle for the first time. One evening, as the stars spread across the sky, she stepped outside. The valley was calm, the wind soft, the fields whispered with new life. Daniel joined her, standing silent at her side. She looked at him, her voice low but clear. "When I first came here, I thought I was nothing." She touched her chest where her heart beat strong. "But you showed me I am more. I am not only hunger, not only a thief, I am alive." Daniel placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his voice soft. "And alive is enough, Lyra." The two of them stood there beneath the stars, their bond forged not from bargain or fear, but from choice, from struggle, from trust. The girl who once stole to survive had found something greater than food, greater than shelter. She had found belonging, she had found family, and as the twin moons rose over the valley, their light silver on the broken fields, Lyra held her head high. Her story was no longer about hunger, it was about hope.